I have a couple of categories on our board here this morning. Of course, I probably am in need of a penmanship class, so hopefully you can read them. If not, I'll throw them out there. Marriage, diet, yay, don't we love that word? It's not even January. Job, brand loyalty, and then our favorite sports teams, Patriots, Red Sox, Bruins, Celtics. Speaking of which, how did we fare last night? Not well. Not good. Okay. So, maybe not the Red Sox, but we still like them.
As I said to one of my friends, we had to lose one because we have to win it at home.
Right.
Yeah, but we've lost two.
Yeah, now we've lost two.
We had to lose two. We have to lose one away.
True. We can't win all three there.
So now we can just win out and be done?
They already bought advertising for all 7 games, so
That could be too. Right. So in each of these categories, I want you to think, I wrote them all up there so that you can respond in as random a fashion as you feel compelled. But in each of these categories, what does devotion look like? And specifically, I'm thinking, what does it mean to you to be devoted to any one of these things? And we're going to look for some commonalities, but I don't want you to really think about that up front. Just what does it mean? We started with the Red Sox. Being, devoted to the Red Sox means even when they lose, we think this way they can win it at home. There's optimism. I'll take that as a part of devotion. That's part of being a Red Sox fan, right? We've got the Dolphins coming up this afternoon, and I'm optimistic. I think that's part about being devoted to your team is optimistic that they're going to win, even throughout, the decades that the Red Sox didn't, and then, quite frankly, the Patriots didn't. There's still a lot of optimism. People still went to the games in hopes that maybe, just maybe. What else do we have?
It's just being, even in the bad times, even in the losing streaks, we can still be true to the team or true to our husband, even when we're having a bad time during a marriage, or we're still not going to say, forget it, this is too hard to leave.
Okay. So we're devoted.
But I mean, marriage is seems to be the only one you can't really do halfway.
Sure you can.
No, you can't.
Unfortunately, I run into people all the time that do.
I think that, but
Yeah, it's best to.
You really can't. You can, but it's not healthy. I mean, you
Right.
can go halfway with a team and jump right back on when they start winning again.
Right, it's like me and the Red Sox.
When it's off, you come in and go,
Well, I think marriage should be a lifelong commitment. People now, when
Okay.
they're treated as such, they go into it, like I just read that, Orlando Bloom, after 2 years of marriage, is separated from his Victoria's Secret model, ex-model wife. And I'm like, 3 years of marriage? You haven't even started yet,
First speed bump.
yeah.
See, everyone views marriage, everything is.
Let's try it and see if it works.
Well, not only that, but they're there for the good times, but the real test of a marriage comes when there are a lot of potholes, never mind speed bumps, but there's a lot of potholes, and then it's the real test. Are you going to stay in it and ride the storm, or are you going to, jump ship?
Okay. Chris, you look like you're itching to say something.
I was just going to say on that, I think you can see from society now that people aren't confident in marriage because they have prenup or agreement. If you're confident you're going to be married, why would you need one?
Right.
Okay, that's a good question. Now, if we're talking about commitment and specifically or devotion rather, what does devotion look like in marriage? Does devotion in marriage look like a prenuptial agreement on the way in? That's an intriguing question.
You're putting conditions on it already. If you don't treat me like this, well, then I'm out of here and I'm taking three-quarters of your stuff with me.
Yeah, they're assuming they're going to get.
I love you with all my heart and soul, but I'm not sure about you.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what a prenup means, isn't it?
Yes, I think so. And that's why, specifically in my job, now this gets very interesting. Now, fortunately, nobody's ever said, Pastor, what do you think about this? Because I'm not sure that, I'm really not sure how to answer the question. There's a part of me that says you can't anticipate what somebody else is going to do 10 years down the line. And in the legal climate in which we live, is it worth protecting yourself?
Yeah, but if he
Does that mean you're not devoted?
There's not anything left for him to have anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Back to reality.
Well, it's not a matter of what you don't have. It's a matter of taking on a weekly basis what I already don't have. Patience, okay. Devotion looks like patience. Devotion looks like commitment. Devotion looks like optimism. Okay, effort. And I think what we see across this, and we kind of answer the question as we go, is that really when we think about devotion to any one thing, I mean, all of these things apply to marriage. All of these things apply to diet. All of these things apply to job. Brand loyalty, you could say, is it really? But yeah, I mean, does anybody have any brands that you're particularly loyal to? Okay, Nikon. That's a good example.
That's the only thing I think I'm brandly loyal to is my camera.
Okay. But do these things apply to you relative to Nikon? If they have a bad body, or you have bad customer service, or you know, whatever it may be, you have a bad encounter with them, your brand loyalty is questioned. Do these same things apply that we've been talking about in every other facet? You're optimistic; they're going to get it right eventually. They're going to take care of you. You're committed to them. You're all of these things.
When you drop what we dropped on our camera bodies, I have no point to be committed. I have to be committed.
Right. Okay. Not in that way. The other, Chris.
I think it does. It's almost on the same front.
Okay.
I mean, the industry that I'm in, obviously, cable TV.
Right.
I see it all the time. We have customers who have stayed with us through, downsizing, changes from ownerships, the customer service, everything like that. And they suck it up because they're like, the service that the techs bring and the help they get.
Right.
Then you have the other people on the other side who, the first little bump, they have a couple days of bad storms or whatever, and they're gone. And they jump like that from people to people.
Right.
I think it's the same thing.
I wouldn't disagree, because I know when I had DirecTV, that really bad year and a half or so, before I actually paid to get rid of them. Yeah. Well, no, I did, because I had no brand loyalty, and they made sure I didn't, because not great reception, and their customer service was horrible, and their billing was terrible. And you combine that with their customer service, and it's just like, okay, how much is it going to cost me to get out of this?
I think that's the bigger thing is with brands and customer service. Nowadays, patience comes along with that because a lot of people are outsourcing.
Yep.
That was our biggest problem, and we brought it back into the States, and everything changed. So now they have people who actually understand what you're talking about. Can actually provide you with some type of service.
Right.
Do we call England? We call the United States not India?
Yes.
Like the bank, when we first came up here, we went with a local bank that's in Norton, actually, it's across the street from where we set one of the branches. And they have always been good to us, and we've been going on now, over 20 years.
Yeah, but they won't give us a loan.
They give us a loan.
Not giving anyone loans, honey.
Yeah.
They give us a loan. One of the cars, but
For all the helps that the banks have getting there. Anyway.
Might be a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, in their case, you're not going to jump to a different bank and move all your stuff just because it's not giving you a loan, right?
Yeah. But Sue said no.
I have no loyalty to that kind of stuff.
So I'm not going to drink soda very often, but if I do, what brand do I drink? Pepsi. A couple of you know.
But that's got to be Sherry.
Yeah, Sherry knows.
But isn't loyalty and devotion sticking with it even if they do say no?
Yeah, but I mean, not all brands have our loyalty.
Give me a loan, so I'm leaving. So
Right.
I'm not devoted.
Well, no, that doesn't mean you're not devoted. But I'm just saying, if you have brand loyalty, sometimes there's not a reason to. I'm not saying we should. If you have a bad bank, by all means change. Whatever. And this is all hypothetical more than reality. Some of us are committed. Like we've been dealing with the same bank for, I don't know, we've been married 15 years, and Kate had a relationship with them before we got married. So, she's probably been with this bank for going on 20 years. And it's not to say that it hasn't had its share of, awkward moments. But she particularly is loyal to me personally. I've explored other banks. I've thought maybe we should be somewhere else. I mean, we have to drive all the way to the other side of Foxborough to make a deposit. This is not convenient. And yet, you know, I look at it and go, I don't really care about the bank. I care about what I'm getting out of this, and so can I get it better somewhere else? So far, the answer has been no, so I stick with them, but it's not because I'm loyal, just because they're giving me the best deal.
Well, not only that, this bank that we're doing business with has never had a buyout. They've always been solvent. Where all the other banks in town have been buyouts and, you know, someone else taking over. So
Yeah.
to me, that's a big plus.
Okay. And so there are a variety of reasons that, you know, that we either are or aren't. And, you know, no worries if you are or aren't. I mean, you know, I like Chris, but I don't think he provides my cable service. Probably not. And I actually do have brand loyalty to who does. Sorry. I like you still, but but it's fine. You know, not, you know, but those, and of course that always sets you up a rivalry. You know, you could be, I've had people in here who are Yankees fans, and this is a sticking point in our relationship. I'm like, you know, Yankees fan, maybe not so much I care. I root for Boston teams no matter what. I'm not a huge baseball person, so that's not as offensive to me as when you come in and rooting for the Giants. That becomes very offensive because, huh? Well, no, Joshua mostly roots for the Saints. But, yeah, I have the Super Bowl that he sat there in his $80 Pats jersey rooting for the Giants. I almost disowned him. You know, so it's...
Is that devotion?
That's devotion to my team, baby. Yeah.
Arranged marriage.
Oh, kinky.
How they do that devotion when they really don't want to be together? Well, it's because of the culture they live in.
Yep.
They're forced to.
That's really excellent observation. And really historically, the idea that we have in the West of you pick your own spouse is kind of a historical anomaly. I mean, arranged marriages are still part of much of the world today, but you go back 100 years and they were like most of the world, the United States included. You know, and this concept of, you know, loving your wife, loving your husband. You know, Paul talks about, you know, loving your spouse in the New Testament. He's talking about somebody you didn't pick. Learn to love them anyway. Very good. That's a good case, you know, is just devoted because this is where you find yourself, regardless of what your choice or proclivity might be otherwise. So, good. That's good.
Where does it come into play where you're going to be devoted to the situation you're in rather than devoted to yourself?
Yeah. Does devotion ever get us to the place where we put the thing or the person that we're devoted to, their interest above our own? I think that's a big part of devotion. You know, as a guy, there are certain things I want, but I'm married, and sometimes my wife wants the exact opposite. Whose want wins, whose need wins. You know, I have 6 lunatics running around my house, also known as children. You know, they have needs that sometimes are contrary to my own. You know, and devotion says, okay, I'm going to put that above my own. That's a level of commitment that is probably missing in a lot of things in life today. Sadly, even in, you know, other parents that I see it, sometimes you're like, you know, or you get the people who are just overcommitted, over-devoted. You know, those people who put every little whim that their tantrum, you know, child puts out there, and they like go that way. And you get parents who never get to seem to do anything themselves. You can go too far in either direction. I know parents who need a daytimer just to keep up with their kids' interests. And so you could maybe go too far. I'm not saying kids shouldn't have interests, and moms, I kudos to you because you got a massive, you know, amount of processing you have to do to get everything covered. But you know, I've seen parents take that way too far. You know, so you could go anyway in a different direction with this. The difficulty, or the danger rather, in all of this, and it's all good that we have commitments and that we have devotion and other things. The danger in any of this, though, is that our devotion to things in our life, even the good things in our life, including spouses, children, jobs, patriots, all of these things, the danger is that our devotion to those things could actually take away from or take precedence over our devotion to God. We live in a day where devotion to God is really, God gets leftovers. And that's just the reality of our day, and sometimes it's the reality of our life. That we have a lot of commitments, we have a lot of things we got to do, and if we have time, we'll give it to God. I've got a lot of expenses, I've got a lot of things I want to do with my money. Whose money? Oh yeah, no, it's not my money. And if there's any left over, then I'll give some to God. One of the problems that churches across America have today is that instead of tithers, we have tippers. Now if your tip is 18%, I would say keep going. But most people are like, oh, I have a 10 and 2 5s and a 1. I'll put the 1 in the offering. You're like, well, whatever. And I'm not saying that to say we need money, although we probably could use it. I saw last week's offering number; it wasn't great. But God has been good, and God is providing. But He's provided through us as we each individually have decided that giving to God is more important than my coffee money, as much as that might hurt. And we make a little bit of sacrifice, and we give a little more to God as an expression of our devotion to Him. And that's very concrete. I realize for most of you that just became wicked uncomfortable. But I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road. When it hits our wallet, actually, if anybody sees my wallet, let me know. But when it hits our pocket, when it hits our finances, that's where it becomes very, very personal. So we want to look today at 2 Samuel, wrapping our heads and our hearts around this idea of devotion. I'm going to take this off so I can see the time. I'm fixated on time, and I just can't. The clock not working. It's driving me nuts. So 2 Samuel chapter 6, let's begin reading in verse 1. I'll start there, and we'll just kind of read around, and we'll try to move quickly, and I'll try to minimize my comments. 2 Samuel 6. Again, David gathered all the choice men of Israel, 30,000.
And David arose and went with all the people who were with him from Baal Judah, to bring up from there the ark of God, whose name is called by the name, the Lord of hosts, who dwells between the cherubim.
And they set the ark of God upon a new cart, and brought it out of the house of Abinadab that was in Gibeah, and Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, drave the cart.
You should just took the sword to Debbie on that one.
I know.
And they brought it out of the house of Abinadab, which was Gilead, and accompanying the ark of God, and Ahio, before the ark.
And David and all the house of Israel played music before the Lord, and all kinds of instruments of fir woods, on harps, and on string instruments, and on tambourines, and sistrums, and on cymbals.
And they came to the thresh place of Nacon, the oxen stumbled, and Ezra reached out and took the hold of the covenant box. At once the Lord became angry with Ezra and killed him because of his irreverence. He died there beside the covenant box.
And David became angry because of the Lord's offering and he called the name of the place Perazazah to this day.
David was afraid of the Lord that day, and he said, "How can the ark of the Lord come to me?"
Oh, sorry, my turn. So David would not move the ark of the Lord with him into the city of David, but David took it aside into the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite.
The ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom the Gittite 3 months, and the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household.
All right, so this is, how many of you have ever read or heard this story before today? Okay, so here's the deal. David is trying to move the Ark of the Covenant, which had been, captured by the Philistines, just randomly ox-carted somewhere into Israel and had been just hanging out. And David's like, we need to get the Ark of the Covenant back to the tabernacle where it belongs. And so they go to move it, and so they set it on a cart, and they begin carting it up, and they've got instruments, and the king's there, and great fanfare. And they get to this place where the ground gets a bit uneven. The ox stumbles, the cart gets wobbly, and one of the guys reaches out to stabilize the ark and drops dead. Weird? Probably. Now let's think about it. Let's see how deep your knowledge goes. How was the Ark of the Covenant supposed to be moved? Okay, right. It was supposed to be carried by Levites. There was golden rods that were built specifically for the ark, which had rings. They would slide the rods through the rings, picked up by the Levites, carried by people through. Did they ever touch the ark in the process? No. Never. And point of fact, they didn't even see it. As much as it sounds like they would be staring right at the solid gold, it was actually covered, was the prescription, was that it was covered, actually multi-layered. And so you've got, fabric draping over this. And so the guys who actually carried it never even saw it. The priests put the rods in, and the Levites, after the tent came down, picked it up and walked away with it. And so this was the method in which it was supposed to be carried. Was David following the prescribed way of transportation? No. And so you have the first part of the problem is David is moving it incorrectly. The second part of the problem is it's exposed for all the world to see. And the third part of the problem is that somebody reached out and touched it. And God said, enough is enough already. This is just more than I can bear. And on the surface, it looks like, wow, God is being really arbitrary, we might even say, capricious. And yet, he went through all the difficulty and time to make sure that somebody wrote down how it was supposed to be moved. He gave them specific directions, and just like we give our children specific directions, we give them directions because we want them to follow them, right? As arcane a concept as that is to them, we understand that. And so God is in the same place. And we look at this, and we could see that some of God's prescriptions might seem rigorous, they might seem taxing, they might seem like overkill. And yet, what they did was ensure that Israel approached God in a very reverent manner. The Ark of the Covenant was the visible throne of God on earth. It wasn't something to be taken lightly. The cherubim that were there to represent the cherubim that cover the throne of God in heaven. And here he was saying, I'm going to give you a physical representation of my throne in heaven, and I'm going to hover between the cherubim here, just like I hover between the cherubim there. This is my seat of power. You will do things my way. And it causes, when we do it the way God said, it causes reverence that in this moment, as David having a party on an ox cart, is just not matching. And so we need to, on the one hand, we could see, wow, God was kind of like, wow, that was just a little bit overkill, literally. Or we could say, no, God expects reverence, and it wasn't being satisfied. He expects devotion, but he wasn't receiving it. Because devotion to God says, I'm at the very least going to do things the way you said to do. I'm going to make that commitment. I'm going to have all the things we talked about. And it just wasn't there. And so there is that expectation of reverence that Israel needed to have, and that we need to have. It's not to say that, what does reverence look like? In our mind's eye, somehow it enters into this cathedral, smoke-filled weird. And that's not necessarily reverent. You don't have to be stoic to be reverent. But, and we're going to see that as we continue reading into verse 12. God expects and deserves a certain amount of reverence. But as we go to verse 12, we kind of balance that with the other side of this. Whoever picked up.
Now it was told King David, saying, the Lord has blessed the house of Obadiah and all that belongs to him because of the ark of God. So David went and brought up the ark of God to his house of Obadiah in the city of David with gladness.
And it was so that when they hear the ark of the Lord had gone 6 days since he sacrificed oxen and sacrifices.
Now, did you notice that how it's being transported has suddenly changed? They that bear the ark. David went and did his homework. Okay, 14.
And David danced before the Lord with all his might. David was girded with a linen ephod.
So David and all the house of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord, shouting amid the sound of the trumpet.
As the ox was being brought into the city, Michal, Saul's daughter, looked out at the window and saw King David dancing and jumping around in a sacred dance, and she was disgusted with him.
Okay, pause. Who is Michal? Saul's daughter and? David's wife. One of, but yes.
So they brought the ark of the Lord, set it in its place in the midst of the tabernacle that David had erected for it. David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before the Lord.
When David had finished offering burnt offerings and peace offerings, he blessed the people in the name of the Lord of hosts.
Then he distributed among all the people, among the whole multitude of Israel, both the women and the men, to everyone a loaf of bread, a piece of meat, and a cake of raisins. So all the people departed, everyone to his own house. Different tone than the first 11 verses. Okay, so now they're transporting it correctly. David, they start off 6 sacrifices, like, wait, sacrifice. We got to do this right. And he's got this linen ephod. What's a linen ephod? No freaking clue. No idea. He's wearing clothes. Somebody said, David danced naked. No, he wasn't naked. He just wasn't as kingly attired as one might anticipate. It's kind of like, running around in a paper sack when you could be wearing linen and silk. He's covered, but not. It's kind of like workout clothes because he's going to work out. And so they bring it in. There's music, there's dancing, and David is leading the parade, and he's making a complete and utter fool of himself. Ladies, have you seen this in your husband? Patriots win. Yeah! We just go crazy. Unbridled, unrestrained celebration. This is, I'll let you in on a secret. Pastor Carl, many years ago, Pastor Carl and I have been friends for a lot of years. The first time I hosted a Super Bowl party. Chris, were you there for that? Chris was there for that too. This goes back to, 01? Has to be, 2001. 2001, Joshua had been born in August. Becca had been born in, I want to say September. And don't anybody tell him I forgot when his daughter's birthday is. And so we get to we're in the Super Bowl, we're February, so, Becca is all of, 5 months old, Joshua's all of 6 months old. We're there at the house, and they're lining up. I mean, the last, half minute, Adam Vinatieri is lining up that last field goal. We hit the timeout. Now, Carl, being the proud papa that he was, had been holding Becca through the whole thing. But he turns to Melissa at this point, he goes, "You better take her." And I think he punched holes in my ceiling. He jumped so high, celebrated so much. Here's a guy who is a native-born New Englander, lifelong Pats fan, has just been dying and crying for this moment forever, and finally got it. I mean, just unbridled, unrestrained celebration. I think my neighbors heard him for several houses down on either side. To which Melissa was just going,
Really?
right. I mean, you can, Melissa, you can picture. So, but this is what David's got going on. He's got this unbridled, unrestrained, impassioned, fervent. I don't think he was, doing any particular dance so much as just the music was going and he was moving. That's what we call dancing, right? Music, movement equals dance. Even in Baptist church, that's dancing. So some people call it, song motions, whatever. It's music, it's movement, it's dancing. So So, he's out there, and and Michael is up in her window going, what an idiot my husband is. And she knew something about what a king was supposed to act like, having been the daughter of a king, looking at the king of Israel, making a complete fool of himself, going, wow, really? Yes. And the point is, not only should we be reverent to God, and we see that really in the first 11 verses, this segment shows us that not only does God deserve our reverence, but he deserves our celebration. That unbridled, unrivaled, passionate celebration of who he is. What he does can go with it, but just who he is. He's worth our reverence, but he is worth our passion as well, and he wants both. And so we see that. We should praise God with reverence. We should celebrate God, praise God with celebration. If we were to continue reading, and regrettably we can't. Thank you, Chris, for fixing the clock, by the way. If we were to continue reading, what we would find is that we still have to work within the boundaries of his will. And I think we see that in both of these things. God desires our passion, but he desires our reverence. And he wants them simultaneously, not separately. And so as we go into 2 Samuel chapter 7, and I'll leave that for you to kind of look at. But there is still, we have to do things the way God wants them to be done. David specifically wanted to build a temple, and God told him no. He said, that's going to be for your son, that's not for you. And so just in the same way that he had to obey and carry the ark in the right way, he had to obey and not do something because God told him specifically not. And so at all points, God deserves our devotion. He deserves reverence. He deserves celebration. He wants them simultaneously, but he wants us to kind of play by the rules, as it were. Just like we want our children to express their love for us, but not at 11 o'clock at night. We want them in bed an hour and a half ago, right? It's nice to be loved, but it's nice to be loved in an obedient fashion. And so we see that in God. So on your handouts there this morning, you have your home connection, which will walk you through everything that's happened here today or supposed to have happened here today. His Way Always, which is the notes I'm theoretically working sort of near. And then a week at a time. A week at a time, I throw this out there as a homework/challenge to actually take us over the course of the week. Think through, and just follow the instructions that are here. Think through your level of devotion to God, and then on a daily basis, see where you matched that level of devotion that you think you ought to have, and note that, and someplace, some facet of life where you didn't get there. And then just kind of note that. The point of the exercise is really just awareness. Because as the week goes on, we hit Monday morning and our week is just in full throttle. We're not always stopping to think, okay, I talked about devotion to God yesterday. Am I living it today? And so the point of the exercise is to help us to reflect on it throughout the week as you go, oh, what did I do that demonstrated my devotion? What did I do that really clearly missed the devotion that I really want to have? Just to help us stay aware. Let me close in a word of prayer. We're being invaded. Father, we thank you for the day. We thank you that you are a God who is worthy of our reverence and desires our impassioned celebration. Father, may we bring both to you, for you alone are worthy. Lord, this week as we walk through the week, would you help us to be aware of those opportunities for us to be devoted. And Lord, may we capitalize on them in every job because you're worthy. And Father, may we see those instances where we fail to be devoted so that we may correct them. Thank you in Jesus' good name.